Let's talk today about the limbic system, how it operates, why it's important in chronic pain and chronic illness, formation and healing, and why it is such a big buzzword nowadays in so many chronic pain and illness communities. But first, my name is Teresa. I am a licensed mental health therapist. I'm a yoga teacher, a Reiki master, an herbalist, and I am really committed to helping people uncover the ways that we can heal our limbic system and our brain and rewire our thoughts to heal. So if you're interested in what I have to say, please hit subscribe and the like button. You can comment below if you have any feedback or questions. And I also have a course dedicated to healing through brain retraining and the limbic system. So the link for all of that is in the description below. So first, let's get into what the limbic system is. The limbic system plays a really crucial role in all of our emotional and physical responses. It's the part of our brain that's involved in how we perceive threat, and it's involved with healing and with illness and with trauma. And so we have to look at how it is so implicated deeply within the way that our body and brains work and process things. So this is a complex network of structures. It's in our brain. It regulates emotions. It goes hand in hand with memory formation and stress response. So we have to kind of look at each part individually to see how they work together. So the most talked about part of the limbic system, I think, is usually the amygdala. And the amygdala is a really key player here. This has to do with perceiving threat, processing emotions, especially fear and anxiety. And in the context of chronic pain and illness and trauma, which we talk about a lot in our community, an overactive amygdala contributes to this heightened emotional response and an amplified perception of pain or threat. So the amygdala is like the warning light that goes off, where something that maybe didn't seem threatening before, we're pairing that with a fear or an anxiety, and now the amygdala starts to kind of go into hyperdrive. The amygdala also often, has a real purpose and does tell us when a real threat is present. But due to a perfect storm of other circumstances, the amygdala becomes overreactive, and that leads to symptoms that we'll talk about a little bit later. So when we work to regulate our nervous system, we balance out this activity, and then we begin to be able to manage our responses a little bit different. The hippocampus is the other part of the brain that we often think about in the limbic system and brain retraining. It works hand in hand with the amygdala. It's responsible for memory formation and consolidation. So the hippocampus can lead to memory disruptions or altered perceptions of our experiences, and we begin to maybe become hyper-focused on the negative things or catastrophizing that bad things are going to happen because we've linked them to trauma or pain. So we begin to restore the function of the hippocampus in brain retraining with the concept of neuroplasticity. We also want to look a little bit at the hypothalamus. This is like the control center for our autonomic nervous system. So it regulates body functions, so things that we're not really conscious of: sleep, appetite, stress response. So any sort of chronic pain or chronic illness can dysregulate the hypothalamus, and then it can disrupt all of these things that are supposed to be normal physiological responses that we have. So this is another thing we focus on, the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that is pretty vital with executive functioning. So this is decision making, problem solving, impulse control. And this becomes dysregulated, and then we have a hard time with making good judgments or maybe coping with stressors. We look at the role of cognitive behavior therapy and positive self-talk and neurolinguistic programming because this part of our brain deals well with rationality and trying to use things to challenge thoughts and how that changes our brain. We create new neural pathways through the way that maybe we script a meditation. This also has to do with emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, and adaptive coping skills. When we look at how all of the structures of the limbic system are connected, and these are just a few that I mentioned, there are more, we are working together with like this synergistic relationship to regulate all of these responses, the physiological ones, the emotion ones. And we want to see the way that our brain and our nervous system interact so that, say we have a real acute pain issue that started our pain, we have a real viral issue that started the illness we deal with, or an environmental trigger. We're not saying that isn't real, but we're saying that over time, the way that the amygdala perceived the threat, the way the hippocampus stored the memory, the way that we changed our behavior to deal with the threat or the symptom created a negative feedback cycle that feels like this perpetual loop that we can't get out of. So even when the threat itself goes away or resolves or isn't quite as strong as it was before, we are stuck in a system of negative feedback and hyper reactivity to things. So this is why we take this multifaceted approach when we're doing brain retraining, healing the limbic system, and especially what I think makes a lot of what I talk about a little different is I don't just focus on changing the thoughts, that's like the only thing we have to do. I think we do need to bring in other therapeutic modalities like mindfulness. Cognitive behavior therapy, neurolinguistic programming is great, but where is the trauma focus? How are we working on addressing our trauma, whether that's working with a therapist or doing these somatic exercises, neurofeedback maybe, and then other mind-body techniques like being out in nature, moving our bodies, feeling a sense of safety, maybe even through adaptive movement, and scaling our movement. This sense of social engagement, polyvagal theory. So here's how we start to work on this holistic approach to reframe our experiences. We want to develop healthier coping skills, have some resilience, and support our journey. So I wanted to talk today about 5 things that you can do to help regulate your limbic system and heal. The first one, I'll talk about over and over again. You'll probably get sick of hearing about it, but mindfulness and meditation is number 1. So we're going to engage in mindfulness practices or meditation. This could be listening to a guided meditation on YouTube. I think that's the easiest thing because we can just kind of plug and play and just at first be passive audiences for this, and then maybe we develop our own practices. And these practices increase our awareness of the present moment, keep us centered and grounded on what is real rather than worrying about what might happen. We reduce our stress, we promote emotional regulation, and we rewire neural pathways because now we have a new set practice of how we think and how we act. We create a sense of calm and balance within our limbic system, and we push ourselves into parasympathetic activation rather than sympathetic fight or flight response. Number 2, deep breathing and relaxation techniques. So whether we are looking up yogic breathing techniques online, or maybe we're just counting our breath or doing a box breath, so kind of tracing a square up on our inhale, exhaling across, inhaling down, exhaling across, inhaling up. Anything we can do, maybe counting our breath, maybe counting in for 3 and out for 5. Because if we can get our exhale longer than our inhale, again, it shifts us into parasympathetic. Maybe we mix that with some guided progressive muscle relaxations or imagery. We get ourselves into that different nervous system state. We get the relaxation response. So we signal to our limbic system that we are safe to shift out of that heightened fight or flight mode. Physical exercise is number 3, and I'm not saying this is anything super intense. This is just getting back into feeling safe in our body. So I have been to the point where I felt basically bedridden and it was really hard to get up, whether that's due to dizziness or pain. Even if all that means is I looked up some yoga stretches, like yoga in bed, and I just worked on what does it feel like to stretch my leg this way, to twist through my spine to keep some range of motion. Maybe you're trying to get back into being able to walk better, and so you're like, I'm going to actually commit to walking around my living room just a couple times a day to get myself in that habit, to get my blood pressure regulated so that I can slowly scale my way up. We know that when we can get into a little bit more of intensive exercise, it releases endorphins, which boosts our mood and help us to regulate our emotions and to feel stronger and to retrain our brain to feel that we are capable of doing hard things. Exercise is also going to reduce stress and help with sleep. So wherever we are with our abilities, even if it's just this idea of moving and learning that we can still move in certain ways and feeling safe in our body and regaining control of our body, that helps with the trauma component that we maybe are having dealing with pain or illness. Number 4 is social supports and connection. So we want to build a strong social network and seek support from others. The issue here is we're often not going to find a positive social network on a lot of the illness groups, like the illness support groups maybe on Facebook. Sometimes they devolve into a lot of symptom obsession and symptom checking and body checking. So this is more about think of ways that we can maybe start a hobby or get into something that's a support group on Facebook or online or at a church or at a local place near us that's focused on something that's maybe kind of a neutral topic, like a craft or a hobby or a TV show that we like. We want to be engaging because in polyvagal theory, that social connection is really important to signal to our nervous system that we're safe. But we want to make sure that we get safety and validation and support here. Number 5 is self-care practices. So again, this might sound a little cliche, but so many of us have fallen into the trap of a cyclical, vicious cycle, chronic pain, chronic illness, because we are burning the candle at both ends. We are in a state of burnout and just always giving so much to everyone else, and it has led to us feeling just exhausted. And that's usually when the immune system suffers or our mental health suffers, and we get stuck in these other cycles of pain or illness. So prioritizing time for that self-care is so essential. And this might be any activity that brings you joy, relaxation, fulfillment, purpose. It could be a hobby or spending time in nature, maybe doing something creative or hanging out with a friend or calling a friend you haven't talked to in a while, doing something nice for yourself, like even if it's just, oh, I'm going to commit to, taking an extra 5 minutes in the shower just to like listen to music today. It can be very simple, but it can be profound over time as well, because we start to get used to the fact that we deserve that and we do need to spend time on these things. So limbic system healing, again, there's a lot that we can go into. I go into a lot of very specific scripts and different activities that we can do throughout a lot of my other videos and my course. But these are really some of the core basics we have to have in place if we're healing through brain retraining. So I think really at the end of the day, it's important to think like brain retraining is popular because a lot of us have been failed by modern medicine. Brain retraining has a lot of promise because it focuses on underlying neuroplasticity changes that have happened in the brain in response to pain and illness, and that there's a trauma narrative here. So the trauma of the initial root cause is what modern medicine misses. And modern medicine sometimes focuses way too much on just chasing symptoms or really relying heavily on medications. So it's not ever getting to root cause. It's not giving us long-term relief. It's making a lifelong patient, really. So that never-ending cycle of doctors and medication, it gets really frustrating. So if you have searched brain retraining, limbic system retraining, and found this video, it's probably because you've been through that and you're like looking for something different. So where conventional medicine has made like a lot of advances with diagnostics, there's a lot of cases here where underlying cause is elusive and it's not addressed. And it's created a lot of like a culture of a lot of like syndromes. And syndrome is kind of what they call clusters of symptoms that they can't quite figure out, like POTS syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, EMF syndrome, or, you get caught up with these diagnoses where it's like, oh, I have an answer, but now I go down another rabbit hole rather than saying, but what is root cause? Is root cause related to the changes in our limbic system because of threat? And how do we work on regulating our limbic system to try to tone down our symptoms and our responses? So we're recognizing that the brain is playing such a crucial role in pain perception, in our emotions, in our relationships, in our sleep and wake cycles, our fatigue. So we look at these maladaptive changes, right, that the brain and our wiring have kind of created over the years of kind of firing the same over and over, and that perpetuates our symptoms. Then we're stuck in the cycle. So when we look at how do we use our brain's neuroplasticity to harness creating positive lasting changes, like create and rewire new neural pathways with scripting and meditation, and helping the limbic system to shift into parasympathetic more often so we're not living in fight or flight mode, that's what the whole point of all of these videos is. So again, I hope that this makes sense to you. I hope it explains why I'm often talking about a mix of like cognitive behavioral therapy, and then over here there's mindfulness, and then there's doing a different script to meditate, and then we're talking about nature and spirituality. They all are linked. We have to have that mind, body, spirit connection to fully get into where the root cause is. So really at the end of the day, I think we're all trying to break free from this cycle that we're stuck in. And I want everyone to feel really empowered. I want us to be able to tap into this innate ability that we all have to heal. Our bodies want homeostasis. Our bodies are craving to heal, but we're so disconnected from the natural world, the spiritual world, that our bodies have a really hard time regulating. They don't know what to co-regulate with. Like when we're out in nature, we co-regulate with the sun and the wind, and we ground into the earth, and our electromagnetic field grounds and feels stronger, and we're eating plants from nature that, you know, the way that we lived for millennia, we had this very natural, innate sense of what we needed to heal. In our modern society, what are we co regulating with? Like TV and internet and medications and toxic things, right? So, no wonder why we're losing touch with where our bodies and our spirits really need to be to heal. So that's where we have to kind of go back to this holistic interconnectedness, and that's where we need to put ourselves in order to truly heal. So this isn't a one size fits all. I'm not saying we can heal everything just by changing our minds. I know a lot of people get like really defensive about some of these concepts, and I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying like, oh, if you're not holistic enough, you're not going to heal, or it's your fault you're not healing. I really think like there are real reasons we've developed this culture where so many of us have chronic pain and chronic illness, but a lot of it has to do with disconnection from our true essence, from nature, from community. So I hope some of this helped today. I know this is a little bit longer than I usually go, and I kind of wanted to just dive in and give a general overview of like what I'm really trying to get the message out about here on our community. So I hope it was a enjoyable video. I hope you learned something. Please comment below if you have any questions or comments on it. And I hope you have a wonderful and healthy and just blessed, amazing week.